Hello and welcome to Jedi and the Mailman, the show where two old friends aim to deliver the best Star Wars talk in the galaxy. I'm Mike the Mailman. That's Jimmy the Old Guy Jedi, and we are joined today by our new friend Angel. How's everybody doing tonight?
I'm good. And Joe, how are you?
Doing awesome. Really looking forward to talking to you guys about some Star Wars. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Mike, how has the weather been for you? We always have to talk about the weather for Mike because he's a
Oh,
mailman. He's out in it. I know it's
Oh
getting miserable
gosh.
out here
yes.
in Kansas. So,
Today
how's
was a
Pennsylvania?
dream. It
Really?
got, it got up to 60 degrees today.
Oh my gosh.
These are the days that the mailman lives for.
Love
It's
our
beautiful
time.
outside. Like my job can be very miserable. Like tomorrow, it's going to be miserable. It's going to rain all day. It's going to be awful. But days like today, when it's 60 degrees, oh, it doesn't get any better, man. Does not get better.
Nice. All right. So, um, we've been trying to get Angel on the show for a while. We finally got it to work out. This is very exciting. Um, Angel, why don't you? I found her on TikTok. She does some awesome, fun stuff on TikTok, and we got connected on Instagram not too long ago. Angel, why don't you tell everybody about yourself and tell them about your channels, your TikTok, your social medias, and then tell us a little bit about your Star Wars background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a fandom and mostly Star Wars content creator across most all socials, but my main platforms are TikTok, Instagram, and as of recently, I'm trying my hand at YouTube as well, a little bit. But yeah, I started posting around like mid 2023, actually shortly after going to Star Wars Celebration in London is kind of what springboarded me into Star Wars content creation. I left Celebration being very, very inspired and just having fallen a lot more in love with Star Wars. And that just kind of launched me into creating. And so I tend to focus on a couple of different things with my creation. I'm a Funko Pop collector, as you can see from my Funkos behind me here, and talk a lot about my collection. I do a lot of saber spinning and stuff like that. And then I focus on talking to you about like characters, story arcs, stuff like that. I'm a literature nerd, and so I love digging things apart and taking them apart and talking about characters and plot and talking about foreshadowing and lore and like anything and everything when it comes to stuff like that. So I like to make videos like that and just kind of geek out as much as possible with my content. I also do a devotional series where I take different things in fandom and in Star Wars and kind of talk about them in terms of my faith. And I'll do little devotionals and things like that. So that's kind of the overview of my content. And yeah, like I said, I got started about 2 years ago, but honestly, I really got into Star Wars in college. My dad had introduced me to Star Wars when I was a kid, and I wasn't super interested. My most vivid memory of Star Wars when I was younger is my dad watching The Phantom Menace, which is my favorite Star Wars movie. No surprise there, and it was the pod racing scene, and he would always leave the door open to his den, and I was hearing something really interesting, and I was like, what is that? And 8-year-old me like peered in and was kind of like, I'm intrigued, and kind of like walked in and just kind of sat there and watched for a little bit, and then ended up sitting down and ended up engrossed in the movie. And so that's kind of how I got into Star Wars. And then flash forward to COVID. It was right around that time, shortly before COVID, I'd started watching through Clone Wars with some of my friends in my college dorm. And then, of course, when the pandemic hit, I had nothing better to do than to binge through all of Star Wars. And so I ended up watching through Rebels, which is my favorite Star Wars project, rewatching all of the movies, and then have gotten to really enjoy watching a lot of the live action shows come out, Bad Batch come out, and stuff like that. And I've been in love with it ever since.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Very cool. Why don't you tell
Yeah.
everybody what you told us about your 2025 resolution for Star Wars? It's pretty interesting. This
Yes,
is pretty
I'm
exciting.
watching through all of the canonical Star Wars shows and movies in chronological order. Never done this before, and it's really interesting because, especially for things like Clone Wars, is what I was talking to them about before, is not in chronological order if you watch it through in the season order. And so there's actually, if you're interested, a list on StarWars.com that has the chronological watch through. And so currently that's where I am in my watch through. and you kind of have to bounce around between different seasons, and there'll be like one random episode from season 3 you got to watch, and then you're back in season 1, and then you're in season 2, and you're flip-flopping back and forth. But it pieces together different like battles, like the Battle of Christophsis, for example, or the Ryloth campaign. And so rather than watching it in bits and pieces as you go through the seasons, you actually get to see the battle in its entirety. And it just carries through a lot of really interesting character arcs and plot points and things like that, especially carrying through like the prequels, then going into Clone Wars and then leading into Revenge of the Sith, has just kind of given me a different perspective and just a really interesting way of viewing some of these different things that happen and watching themes be carried through and stuff like that. So it's really fascinating. I'm in Clone Wars right now. My goal is to finish it by the end of the year, and so I would be finishing, actually, funny enough, with Rise of Skywalker, which is what we're about to talk about, because that is the final project in the Star Wars canon as of currently, at least. And so yeah, that's been very, very fun so far, and I'm looking forward to continuing on with that as we go into further in 2025. And I'll definitely be spending a lot of time on the plane to Star Wars Celebration in Japan, watching through an awful lot of Star Wars and knocking some of that off my list. So that's what I'll be occupying my flight time with.
That'll be a good way to spend those 16 hours or whatever it is for you. I know I think it's about what yeah. So Fan in the Hat said I started a chronological the Clone Wars watch this year too. Very cool. And I love that handle, by the way. The Fan in the Hat. Very cool handle. So yeah, before we get into the Rise of Skywalker, there has been some news recently. We were going to cover this last week, then we got caught up, or this weekend, and we got caught up in the Kathleen Kennedy hype. And so we ended up taking something that should have been 5 minutes and just doing the whole show on it. But how are you feeling? So we've got 4 announced panels. We got 1 on Friday, 2 on Saturday, and 1 on Sunday. How are you feeling? And you've been to London. What else, have you been to any other ones besides London?
London was my first. So
wow, that's a great way to start. Okay, that was fun.
It really was.
Most of them have more space in the corridors. So hopefully they'll have more space for us there.
That's good to know, because those corridors were tight. We got in a couple traffic jams.
That's a little scary. How are you feeling about what we have so far? Guests, the number of guests, the level of guests, I guess. And these first 4 panels that we've been. How are you feeling about it?
For the panels, I'll admit I do have some mixed feelings. I'm a little bit surprised that there is not a Lucasfilm panel in and of itself on Fridays like there typically is. I know that is kind of a very like revered thing when it comes to Star Wars Celebration. That's where so many big announcements have happened in the past when it comes to movies and shows and stuff like that. And so that definitely caught me by surprise. I am definitely excited about the Mandalorian and Grogu panel. I think there's a lot of cool things that could come out of that. But I'm kind of bummed that we don't have a Lucasfilm panel. I feel like that really is such a big part of Celebration, especially kind of kicking off Celebration. But I'm super happy about the Ahsoka panel announcement, seeing as we have basically had absolute crickets since the season 2 announcement, pretty much, other than them saying that they're going to film in 2025. And so I'm really, really hoping that we're going to get a lot more detail as to what season 2 is going to hold. And Ahsoka is, one of my favorite Star Wars projects because Ahsoka's my favorite character. I love Rebels. And so that is definitely the panel that I am going to try to reserve. That's where I'll have my sights set on. I know that Andor is definitely expected, especially with Andor coming out. I would have been absolutely shocked if there wasn't an Andor panel. I know a ton of people are excited about that. Visions is an interesting choice. I think Visions is really cool, but for a main stage panel, I think it's a bit of an odd choice. I'm also really surprised we didn't have an announcement for Revenge of the Sith 25th anniversary panel on the main stage. Doesn't mean they necessarily won't do one at all, but if they do, that means there won't be a reservation for it, which I'm a little nervous about, seeing as that can kind of be super intense when it comes to people trying to get into those panels. So we'll see. I do hope that they'll do a Revenge of the Sith anniversary panel. I think it'll be a real shame if they don't for the 25th anniversary, but I will admit I'm super happy about Ahsoka, and so I'm like, hey, I'll take that, because that was my biggest hope, was that we were going to get an Ahsoka panel, and I got that. So I'm thrilled with that for sure. I feel the same way. I mean, I've started going at Chicago, got Anaheim and London, and this will be my 4th one. And
I don't know. I think they'll announce more things. We'll see how it goes. Not having a Lucasfilm panel says they don't have a lot to announce. I mean, I wonder what they can actually tell us about Ahsoka. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, Filoni's not going to tell us anything. They're like, hey, we're making a second episode season. Yay. I'm concerned. Feel like
Yeah.
we're flying all the way to Japan for a little dinky con that just happens to have Star Wars slapped on it. But I'm sure it'll be fun. It's going to be cool and I have to stay positive. I think it'll be fun getting to meet all these people and things like that. But
my other hope for an animation panel to be announced, that would really be my saving grace, because again, animation is really where it's at for me when it comes to Star Wars. And there's been so much talk about animated projects that are yet to be announced, and so I'm hoping that if we get an animation panel, then we'll see some announcements there. And if we get that, then I'll be really thrilled. If we don't have an animation panel, then yeah, like you said, I'm gonna be a little bit kind of surprised we don't really have. I feel like we're not really gonna then have a lot of announcements coming out of the celebration. And so I'm hoping to maybe see something like that. I'm trying to keep optimistic for that, but we'll see in the coming weeks here. I am really thrilled with the guest list, though. I'm super excited, especially about Oscar Isaac, because I have never had an opportunity to meet him before, because he doesn't do a lot of conventions. And so I have a photo op with him. I'm super excited about that. And then, of course, some people that I know and love dearly. Vanessa Marshall is going to be there. Ashley Eckstein is going to be there. I'm really looking forward to seeing them again. Talked to Ashley about Japan last time I saw her, and really excited about that. And I'm excited that Rosario is going to be there too. I might try to do the duo photo op with her and Ashley, because I've never met Rosario before. So I think that would be really cool. But I'm super excited about Oscar Isaac. I'm so geeked about meeting him, because he is my favorite character in the sequels. So I love Poe, and I'm kind of like jazzed. I'm gonna get super like fangirly and just totally starstruck meeting him. I don't know what I'm gonna say. I probably won't be able to formulate words into sentences properly. And we'll probably just kind of awkwardly stand there and be like, hi, oh my gosh, I love you, and that'll be about it. But I'm excited, so it's gonna be great.
Oh my goodness! All right, we'll let him know you're coming so he can prepare himself. So that'd be good.
There's not going to be a lot of coherent words that are going to come out. I'm probably just going to be like
some weird grunts and like,
yeah, exactly, and awkwardly run out of the photo booth as quick as I possibly can. Will be about it, but it's going to be great. I'm super excited.
That's exciting. Yeah, I'm glad. That's really cool. That'll be fun. It sounds like. I mean, it's always fun. You have fun. You'll meet lots of people. I'm excited for that aspect of it.
For sure.
But yeah, you're talking about Poe, so I think maybe we dive in, Mike. What do you think?
Yes.
Let's do it.
Bad boy. Okay, so today's project. Again, Mike, tell everybody why we're doing this.
Well, we just decided that a look back at the sequel trilogy. This was a good time to do it. I had realized that there's a lot of the sequel trilogy that I just could not remember. Like people like be talking about it, and I'm like, man, I don't remember that scene at all, or I don't remember that storyline or whatever. And I thought we need to dive back into this and see, what did I miss? Like, what happened? You know, these movies sort of came out with a bit of I don't know. They weren't well received necessarily. So I don't know if when I watched them, if that got in my head a little bit. And I just wanted to, now that I've kind of dove back into the Star Wars world, kind of look at these movies with fresh eyes and a fresh light, and see, what do I really dislike them, or do I like them? So we just kind of gone back through the sequel trilogy, starting from the beginning, and now here we are at the third one, and just kind of get our opinions on this thing here.
All right, Mike. So here's the question, and I think this is the most important question we answer for the whole thing.
Okay.
How did you feel walking out of The Rise of the Skywalker? I don't know how many times did you see it in the theater? Just once. Probably, knowing you. Yep. Yeah. How did you feel walking out? Do you remember? Because
I don't know. Honestly, I sat down and watched this. What was Sunday? I sat down and put it on. And it started out, and I'm like, did I ever see this? And it took a little while before I started remembering things. And I'm like, okay, this is starting to, yeah, this is ringing some bells. Okay, yeah, I have seen this movie before, but for whatever reason, like none of it registered with me, really. I mean, as I watched through, I realized, yeah, I've seen it, but none of it sunk in. None of it, it just was kind of there. You know what I mean? I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, I get it. Oh, I get it. And Joe, how about yourself? So take yourself back 2019, December 16th. I'm sure you can remember exactly what you were wearing, what you're feeling, who you were with. You walked out of the Rise of Skywalker for the very first time. How were you feeling about the conclusion of the Skywalker saga?
Well, it's funny because I do remember exactly why we went to see the movie, and it was for my dad's birthday. We went as a family
Oh,
to see Rise of
excellent.
Skywalker, and so and the sequel trilogy was the first trilogy that I got to see all three movies in theaters, and so I will say that that is definitely something I look back on fondly. Just the experience of getting to see those movies in theaters, and like you said, sequel trilogy was not really, it's not my trilogy. It's my least favorite trilogy, but I have moments of it that I really enjoy. And so I remember kind of leaving the theater and yeah, kind of having feelings of being like there were parts of that movie that were really cool, but not feeling sure I knew I wasn't quite sure how I felt about how it ended. I was conflicted with how I felt about the ending. And then, like you said, I really haven't revisited these movies in a long time. And so it was interesting going back and rewatching it after a while. And I pretty much had the same experience that you did, where I was like, I've seen this before. Why? Like the beginning of the movie, I was like, why do I remember none of this? And then as it went on, I was like, oh wait, yeah, I remember this scene. Oh wait, yeah, no, I know. And then kind of like connecting the dots together. And there are scenes that definitely stand out to me as being like, oh yeah, I remember that, and I remember exactly, sitting in the theater and watching this scene, especially some of the lightsaber battles, especially in particular, we'll never forget watching the moment where Rey passes off the lightsaber to Kylo. Like
Yeah,
that moment is very
that was
vividly
great.
stuck in my head, watching that in theaters
Mhm.
and going, wow, that was really, really, really cool. And so yeah, I was conflicted because I was like, parts of this movie were great and other parts of it were not great. And
Yeah.
so yeah,
It's
interesting
really
going
interesting.
back and rewatching it.
It's
Yeah.
really interesting that we had sort of the same experience here. Like
Yeah.
starting off, you start off with this idea of like, did I see this before? I can't remember it. And yet the movie starts off with a lightsaber, like Kylo is just laying waste to those Embo looking dudes. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like on that
Yeah.
planet to find that. Like, how do we
Wasted
not
fire.
remember that?
I
Like,
don't know.
it's
Genuinely
crazy.
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched
Before
that
I
scene and I was like, I don't think have I seen this before? I've seen this before, but I don't recall that. And then like the fighter scene with like Poe and Finn, I was like, I don't think I've
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
ever seen this
yeah.
before. I
And
don't
that was
remember
super
at
exciting
all.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Tahu
Tayo
says
seemed to have had a great time.
yeah, moments after walking out of Rise of Skywalker midnight opening session, I wanted to attach it to my veins. To me, it was like fast-paced rugby game. That's our
Good.
Kiwi stuck in Australia. Big rugby fan. The fan in the hat says, "Watch it with a few friends. The atmosphere was utter loathing, which was awkward for me, who enjoyed it more than I expected to, based on the bad word of mouth." Okay,
Mhm.
so
Yeah,
I
can
can't.
I touch on that real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Bad word of mouth. I think that has painted my experience of movies a lot lately. Like you
Well, the Star
there's
Wars fans,
this
I can believe it. I
yeah,
mean,
and not just Star Wars, not just this movie. There is so much now, like so many different outlets that talk about movies and it seems like everybody just wants to, yeah, that was terrible, that was terrible, that was terrible. And it's all you hear. And when you're going to the movies and have to spend, $20 for a ticket or more, two people to go out to the movies is like $100 to enjoy popcorn and drinks and everything like that. And you hear all these people bashing on everything. It really paints your opinion before you even get there. Half the time you don't want to even go because is it really going to be worth it? And then even if you do decide to go, already got that in your head that this might not be so good. And I really think that affects our movie going experience nowadays. But
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so
Tiara
hard
says,
to be able to go into a movie or a TV series without, at this point, I feel like having a preconceived notion about it.
mhm,
Just like you said, because of the amount of media surrounding, like the instant a movie comes out, or I mean, even before it comes out, you've already got people in depth analyzing everything, talking about everything. And so it's so hard. I try my best when it comes to things like that to avoid seeing any kind of reviews or anything, and to try to like isolate my experience, especially if I'm like gonna go see a film in a theater and be like, I just want to make my own opinion. And then
yeah,
afterwards I'll look at what other people say. But it's like I want to have my opinion of it first. And I
yeah,
want to try to go into it unbiased. But it's hard to do. It's hard to do
yeah,
nowadays.
yeah,
it
I mean,
really
because a
is.
lot of those content creators that are out in Los Angeles get to see it a couple of days, and they give you their non-spoiler review, and you can read a lot from their body language. Um,
Exactly.
Mhm.
Tiara says, "I just remember my dad being a grumpy McGrumpster after the movie. That's not good." Tiara, how did you feel? I mean, if you don't, I guess you don't remember. All right, so, and I'm trying for myself, and I don't feel like I would have waited. I'm not sure. I think maybe we got like a 6 or 7 o'clock Thursday night opening for this, so I don't think it was ruined for me. But I took my buddy has a couple people bought them, and it has all the seats and stuff in it. So I took my Star Wars club. I was dressed up like Obi-Wan Kenobi, all the kids and some of the teachers that came with me. So we took a full bus, like a little bus load of people, probably 30 of us. We drove to the theater as a group, and then some people met us there. So I had a really fun atmosphere that I was part of to go see it. And I remember being like, okay, that was better than The Last Jedi.
Yeah,
That was my thought when I walked out there. I enjoyed it. Now, I will say that this kind of makes me sound like a psycho, but I saw it 9 times in the theater. I mean, I saw it 3
Wow.
times within 24 hours because, like, I took that group, then I went with the swimmers, then I went with a buddy of mine who likes to go to the movies early in the morning when no one else is there. So within 24 hours, I had seen it 3 times, and I enjoyed it, like, every time. Like, the things that I liked, I liked. Things that I didn't like, I thought it slowed down a little bit. I mean, obviously, the more you watch it, like anything else, um, it's like when your person moves into a routine, like, it feels like it's too fast, and by the time you perform it, the 8 counts seems super easy. So, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
And
I do. And super
and
get it.
so um but yeah, I enjoyed it. And like last night we watched it, and I don't think my wife had seen it a ton, maybe once or twice with me, and she's just like, where's this going? And I don't think she remembered it that well. But yeah, I remember being like, okay. But as the end of the Skywalker saga, I was kind of eh, you know
yeah,
so yeah, so I mean, I don't have experience. I'll tell you, I'll DM you, Tiara. But yeah, I can get down with my bad self. What's Tahu say? He says 9 times you were my king, bro. Well, I had that movie pass. So it wasn't like I was paying for it every single time. But then I went home to Pennsylvania. I took my sister and my aunt. They wanted to go down to Pittsburgh to see it on the IMAX. We went and did that. Came back, took my dad to see it. And then I remember, like, I was like at 8 times. I got back to Kansas, and I was like, oh, Rise of Skywalker still there. This is the last week for it. I've seen it 8 times. It's the 9th movie. I'll go see it one more time just on a whim. And I did. So there you go. 9 times in the theater. Maybe I mean, it has to be a record for me.
you, you
But
know, it's like you almost knew that COVID was coming, and you needed to cram in every viewing that you could in a theater
yeah,
before it happened.
Yeah,
sure,
exactly.
for sure, for
Wow.
sure, for sure. So let's talk about the big theme here. And we'll get into some things we love, things we didn't like so much. We can talk about some of our favorite characters now that we're at the final. But we're trying to focus on the Rise of Skywalker. I think, Mike, we might have to do like the trilogy as a whole kind of thing later. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we're trying to like focus on these. But was it a satisfying ending to the Skywalker saga? Like, is it a good enough movie to wrap up? We're going on close to 50 years now of Star Wars, right? I mean, it's been with us. It's been part of Mike and I's life since we were born. I mean, we were 1 when it came out, right? I think.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so, And Angela, it's always been a part of your life as well. Did this wrap it up for you guys in a way that if we got no more movies about Skywalkers or Rey, are you satisfied? Angela, I'll let you go first since you're our guest. Are you satisfied with the wrap up of the Skywalker saga?
A difficult question. I feel like if we're talking about just the sequel aspect of the Skywalker saga, I would say yes. But the Skywalker saga as a whole, I would have to say I don't think so, just because I feel like there are things that are still left untouched. And just kind of as a film that you want to really pay homage to, I mean, like you said, almost 50 years of these films, and this, I mean, just like giant of fandom and cinema that is Star Wars and is the Star Wars movies. I don't think that Rise of Skywalker quite meets that benchmark for me, just because of some of the things when it comes to how I think, especially some of the characters, that are so central to the Skywalker saga are handled in that movie, and even kind of the movies, preceding it. But I would say if I'm looking at just the sequels, I think it does give a satisfying ending to that arc
Portion of it.
of the
Okay.
Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
Is probably how I would say I feel about it. So it's a tough
That's
question. It really
that's
is.
a good answer. I think you may hear two other similar responses. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure. So, Mike, what about you, bud? Does it
Well,
mean I like the way she broke it down. So I mean we could do it that way too. Like does it finish this trilogy for you in a way that you're satisfied, and did it satisfy our entire life of Star Wars?
yeah. I like Angel said, I think it was a fine finish for the trilogy. But as far as the Skywalker saga, in my opinion, I wish the Skywalker saga would have been done in the first one. Like when the Force Awakens came out, if they would have just ended all of the legacy characters and moved on fresh from there, I think I would have been a lot more happy. I liked the thing about um the first one, the Force Awakens. We liked like getting the nostalgia bit was great, but I didn't want that nostalgia to continue through the rest of the saga. Like I wanted it to come to an end and the new characters just to take off from there. Like
Yeah.
I don't think we needed Palpatine coming back in this third movie. I I don't think that Princess Leia should have survived to fly through space and come back to life. Like I thought that was really silly. Like just give her a decent death and move on from there. I would have liked to seen this whole trilogy just shot in a completely different way. But to Angel's point, yeah, the ending for these three movies, I'm okay with.
All right. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way you guys are. I won't beat it to death, but I don't feel like it wraps up 9 movies. Now, I don't think I ever went into this thinking this was the end. You know what I mean? Unless Rey and everyone dies and then in the final order wins, then maybe it's over. But I don't think I really went into it thinking it was the end of it. I mean, I want more Rey stuff, even though like she's not necessarily my favorite character. I think for the trilogy itself, again, like you guys said, it's fine. Is it how I wanted it? No, but I mean, yeah. So, and then for the full, 9 movies or whatever, yeah, I think that it fell short. I don't know how you change that. I mean, have you guys heard? You probably heard like the Colin Trevorrow version, like the Duel of the Fates. Have you guys seen anything or heard anything about how? Because he was originally pegged to write this movie. Well, originally, supposedly Ryan Johnson was going to write the treatment for it, and then he was going to produce it or direct it. But then he wrote his own version, and then he couldn't get along with like him and Kathleen Kennedy just had these different visions of what was going to happen, and then so they went and they threw a gajillion dollars at J.J. Abrams to come back because that's what that's always been my biggest criticism is like obviously like 7 and 9 feel like the same movie, and then you throw 8 in there, and just kind of throws out the continuity, I think. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this was really how I thought it would go or not, but yeah, it's fine. She says I found myself we watched it last night, I think. And I found myself smiling at parts, and at the end when she says Skywalker, I don't know why I kind of liked it more than I did. I think maybe when I first heard it, like, all right, like I get it now. I get, maybe it's because we've reflected and I wasn't doing podcasts and talking about Star Wars and listening to other people, listening to positive people talk about it. I was listening to all like the fandom menace and stuff. And so like I found myself smiling. I'm like, yeah, I get it. Like, you get those weird goosebump feelings. I was like, all right, she's a Skywalker. Let's see where this goes. So
I kind of had that too. When I first watched it, when it came out, I remember kind of being like, oh, Rey Skywalker, I don't know how I feel about that. And watching it, today, I was like, oh, especially after watching like her relationship with Leia. I think that's more so kind of what did it for me, and the fact that Leia kind of trained her a lot more and had a relationship with her kind of in this movie, which was one thing I wish we'd gotten to see more of in this movie in particular, but especially with her relationship with kind of both of them at the end there, I was like, okay, yeah, that really, and that kind of like you said, hearing people on the more positive side talk about it, I was like, yeah, you know what, that's really appropriate. I think that works really well for her. And so for her character in particular too, I think that's a really nice conclusion to her character. And although it's probably not going to be, because I'm hoping that we're going to get this Rey movie, and I would really love to see that. But I thought that was a nice kind of fitting end cap to that part of her character arc. And yeah, that sat with me very differently than it had in the past. And I was like, you know what? I understand that choice. And I think I really like that, especially when I was thinking about how she fought with Leia's lightsaber in that last battle. I like the fact that she is the only person who has fought with both Luke and Leia's saber is, I don't know, just really cool to me, because is it Luke and Leia's or Anakin and Leia's? I can never remember the history of that one particular saber. I lost at one point with that one, but like she has a very deep connection with a lot of different Skywalkers. So that rang differently for me watching it this most recent time.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. It's not something I picked up on the first time through. I think I was more focused on what I didn't like about it and how I would rather have seen it go, and didn't, but you're right. Like, it does make sense. That is a good ending. It is the right way to go when you're going with what the story was and not what you might have wanted it to be, but what it actually was. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Tahu says having Force Ghost, Luke, and Leia together closed the Skywalker saga perfectly together again. Yeah, that's one thing we never get. I want to talk about the whole use of Leia in this movie next, but I love Rey Skywalker. I'm a big sucker for found family narratives, and I call that being her destiny from day one. So I was thrilled. Yeah, awesome. I'm glad people enjoyed that. I mean, it felt like what we needed. How did we feel, going into this movie? Because I mean, she had passed away before The Last Jedi came out. And then everyone was talking about how they're going to use Leia. Do you think that worked? And what do you think? Like, poor Billy Lord, right? I mean, one scene she has to be carrying her mother who's gone. So, I mean, she's walking the general, away, but she knows that's supposed to be her mother's character. And then, of course, she plays her when we find out that Leia was trained as a Jedi, which I don't know why, but I love that. But we'll come around to that. But how did we feel about Leia and how they used her, that footage and stuff like that? Did it work for you guys? Because I mean, I felt like it was fine. I felt like some of the conversations were kind of geared a little too much towards so they could get her to say what they needed her to say. Because I mean, they were using old footage of her and stuff like that. Yeah. So, Mike, did you bother you at all? Or
yeah, it was clunky. It was weird. I didn't like I said, I wanted her to die in the last movie. Like, it just, not that I didn't want more Princess Leia per se, but like I said, I just wanted that. I wanted to go forward with new characters. So her in this movie, it felt stilted. It felt weird. They had to go with what they had. They had this idea. They had this narrative how they were going to go forward, and they needed that character, so they had to go with it. but I don't feel like it worked as well as it could have. It certainly would have worked better if she was still alive, but I
Well,
guess
yeah.
they did what they could, with the story that they had. I mean, that's kind of the whole thing was just kind of, I don't know, just good enough. It's good enough.
Yeah. And Joe, what about you? Were you okay with it? Did it work for you?
I'm not gonna lie, I couldn't remember the exact timeline of when Carrie Fisher passed away. I knew it was before when Rise of Skywalker came out, because I mean, I remember, seeing the movie and that being such a big part of it. But I'm not gonna lie, I actually really enjoyed Leia in this movie, and I think rewatching it, some of her scenes were some of my favorite scenes in the movie. And I personally didn't really notice anything I thought super like in particular like awkward about her dialogue. I mean, dialogue in Star Wars is just something
Fair.
I'm just very kind of used to being awkward, and so I didn't notice anything that really stood out to me in particular about that. And I really loved the use of her character. I think maybe the only thing that I don't love is exactly kind of how she died. Honestly, because it
Yeah.
does feel very anticlimactic for such an incredible character. But other than that, I really love her character in the movie again, and her relationship with Rey in particular really stood out to me watching this. And I really enjoyed that. Kind of that almost very motherly kind of relationship that she ended up having with her was really sweet. And I found myself really kind of emotional watching some of those scenes, whereas I really hadn't been the last time I watched it. And so yeah, that hit me really really differently. And I really enjoyed it. Again, like you said, obviously would have been incredible if she could have been alive to continue and finish filming that out. But I think I'm really okay with what they how they worked with what they had.
Yeah.
And overall, honestly, really, really loved that we got to see more of her in this movie. I agree with you on the fact that I wish the nostalgia wasn't carrying so heavily through this movie, and I wish there was more of a focus on the older characters. But for her, I'm okay with what they did, because I really enjoyed all of those scenes, and I felt that it reflected well onto Rey, and it didn't take too much of the spotlight off of her. I thought they used her well in that relationship. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this would have been a whole different movie if Carrie Fisher had still been alive, I think.
yeah.
I think that's what Komel says here too. I mean, yeah, her passing, I mean, it just kind of takes it to a different realm. I don't know if, because every time I don't think everyone talks so highly about how she looked in Rogue One, and then how
Mhm.
Billy Lord looks as a young Leia in that training scene. But I still think that's pretty, like, not good CGI, not good, whatever deep faking, I guess you want to call it. So they kind of had to do what they did. It was fine. I have to have been awful, like, acting against
Yeah.
that. I think, like, just knowing, like, I mean, these guys are all professionals and they did a
Yeah.
fine job. Like, it feels like they're talking to her, but can you just imagine being an actor and having, like, yeah, I'm talking to Carrie Fisher, but I just see this lady in front of me, and I don't know. It kind of
Very
weirds me
different.
out. And I
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
if it's, and I don't know if it's fair. Like, it's not fair for me to be like, well, I didn't really like it. I mean, what else were they supposed to do? So I feel
Right.
like it, just knowing that she was gone, and that's not really, I mean, it's her, but it's not really her in this movie. I don't know. It throws me for some reason, I guess, but yeah, I don't know. It is what it is, I guess. They had to go with what they had. Thank you, bro. You nailed it. Fan in the Hat says, come out, definitely, no matter what I think, whatever version 9 that we got would feel a little weird and incomplete. Yeah, I agree with you
Yeah.
guys. So let's talk some highlights. Let's talk some highlights of the Rise of Skywalker. I feel like again, we try to focus on what we do like here, not necessarily what didn't work for us. Do we have favorite scenes, or and Joe, you said, like, Poe's your favorite. Like, is there something about what he did in this movie that really like worked for you? I thought personally the comedy was much better. Like, it was back to being like Star Wars comedy, because
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about the Last Jedi, but that drove me nuts. But so what did you think? What is your favorite? You got some highlights
One of
for the
my
Rise of Skywalker?
favorite One of my favorite scenes with Poe in particular is actually one of towards the very beginning of the movie when he comes back to base with the Millennium Falcon on fire, and him and Rey are arguing with each other, and he's like, "What did you do to BB-8?" And she's like, "Well, what did you do to the Falcon?" That scene had me cackling, and I didn't remember it. And watching that, I was just like, this banter. It very much reminds me of like it's like a Ahsoka and Anakin kind of banter,
Yeah.
and I love that. And I was just like, this is beautiful. This right here, this friendship, I love this. But I will say part of the reason I love Poe so much is I actually really love so many people either haven't seen, don't know it exists, or hate the show, but it's the Resistance show, the animated show. I love that show. And Oscar Isaac voices Poe in that show, and I love Poe in that show. And so it really helped me to love his character more than rewatching and going through the sequels, because I kind of have some extra attachment to him because of that show. And so getting to see him in this movie after having watched Resistance for the first time last year, where he's just kind of, not just started out in the Resistance, but it's obviously much earlier on in that kind of journey for him, and then seeing him all the way to being a general, I was just like, look at you, I'm so proud of you. And I loved to kind of compare that, because that's really the most recent thing I've watched when it comes to the sequels, is Resistance. And so it was really cool to watch that, because I was like, oh, Poe, look at how you've grown. Oh my gosh. And so I was really happy to kind of get to contrast that. And so, yeah, I love Poe. I do have a favorite scene though. And it's the World Between Worlds scene towards the end of the movie. And this is actually, it's so funny because the sequels are not my favorite movies, but this is one of my favorite scenes in the entirety of Star Wars. And it is specifically because of all of the Jedi's voices that you hear, and specifically because of Ahsoka and Kanan. And I will literally, like, I was making my dinner while I was watching it, and I had to pause everything I was doing, glue myself to the screen, and I wept every time I do, just because Kanan, especially hearing his voice, always really gets me. And so that is my favorite scene. I find that scene just generally very, very powerful. That, if there is a scene I could say I feel like does a nice job of wrapping up so much of Star Wars, it's that scene. Because I love that we get to hear the voices of so many Jedi from so many different eras of Star Wars. The fact that they incorporated Ahsoka, the fact that they incorporated Kanan, it's the only time we have them in the films, is just something that's so cool to me. And I love all of those lines and how all of that comes together. So that scene like gives me chills every time. And yeah, like I said, I bawl my eyes out because I'm like, Kanan, I miss you. Kanan and Ahsoka are my two favorite characters. So yeah, that's no surprise there that the one scene that they're in the movies, I'm like favorite. So I love that scene, and honestly, I just love the end, that kind of final act of the movie. Love the scene with Rey and Kylo, and the lightsaber exchange is another one of my favorite things. So that just whole sequence is awesome to me, and I really, really enjoy watching that. And honestly, sometimes I will just watch those couple scenes because they're my favorite, and I really, really love them. So yeah, that's the highlight for sure for the movie for me.
Perfect. Fan the hat says, I love the pulpy adventure vibe. This hat was very Indiana Jones in spirit, with the trio hunting for the lost Sith relics. Yeah, I would throw Goonies in there with the old, the key.
Yeah.
As well.
Oh, yeah.
And then Tahu says the Aki Aki Festival of Pasana, celebrating every 42 years. I think the reference went over everyone's head. Now I got it. I saw it. I was like, that's a good one. I love that comedy there too. And they all look at 3PO, and he turns around and he's like, what are they looking at? I thought the comedy was pretty good there.
Yeah.
Mike, what about you, bud? Where are you sitting with like a favorite scene or two in this?
Well, first off, I'd have to say the scenes that Angel picked, all fantastic. I would definitely put those in my top. And I love Kanan too. Like, for a Jedi, just from a silly little cartoon, like, man, they developed that character so well. He's the best. I freaking love Kanan.
He really
But
is.
some other things that I really liked was the saber battle between Kylo and Rey, when Rey is up on Kylo's ship and Kylo's down on the planet.
Oh, yeah, that was
just
cool.
when Yeah, when he slices through and like the mess just goes all over the floor up on the ship, and then when
Berries,
she
yep.
and Vader's helmet falls, like that was really really cool. I really like that. And then it comes to the scene like Angel was talking about with the saber, handing off the saber, like they figured it out that they could cross that barrier. That was so cool. And then one of the other things I really liked was oh, what's his name, the the little dude who
Babu
reprograms
Frick.
3PO.
Babu
Yes,
Frick.
Babu Frick.
I
Babu
love
Frick is
him.
freaking awesome, dude. Total Star Wars creature, like just the perfect little puppet. Like just he's
Oh, yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
It's just so cool.
Funny
And
that's the
it's
same lady
3PO's line. Oh, it's my oldest friend, Babu Frick.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't. The comedy for that is awesome. And a little trivia: most people listening probably know this, but that's Moaning Myrtle, the actress that played Moaning Myrtle
Oh,
in the Harry Potters, is
Oh,
actually
really?
the person who voices Babu Frick. Yeah.
I had no
So
idea.
I love everything you guys have said. I do love when we finally get Ben Solo, and he says the only word he says after like my favorite scene is "ow." But when
I noticed
he
that.
does
I was
he
looking at the little
does
captions.
he does the no look blaster shoot, shot like his dad would have
mm,
done. Then when he
Yep.
gets the saber, he does the hands up like Solo.
yeah,
And I thought, man, like I that makes me feel like we've missed out on so much of having Adam Driver be Han Solo's kid. But
yeah,
my favorite, you're sitting there and Ray takes off and she leaves him there, and then you hear, "Hey, kid," and I was like, "Holy no!" Like I was like, "Wait, what?" And he turns around and he has that exchange with Harrison Ford, and it's they talk exactly the way they did in The Force Awakens, and then Kyle, or well, I think it's Ben by this point. Ben's like,
yeah,
Dad, and he goes, "I know," and to get to use that line, "I know," again was just like every time
yeah,
I see that, I'm like, "Whoo!" Like wow, like that was pretty powerful. Um, but yeah, that definitely, because you guys hit a lot of them. There's a lot of little things here and there. Some of the adventure scenes and things like that were fun. Um, but that scene for me, I do like the lightsaber battle. I like the one on Kijimi and then the shuttle where they were kind of revolving. Like the camera work for that was phenomenal. I love
Mhm.
that, and like I said, it kind of sets up what they do at the end. I did think they
mm,
did a decent job of like kind of setting things up, stuff like that. But yeah, the scene with Harrison Ford and them. I mean, I know a lot of people had some pretty strong reactions to it, and mostly positive. So I really enjoyed that. Let's see, where we got here. The fan in the hat says, "I love seeing Ben Solo as swashbuckling badass for a minute. Adam Driver really felt like his father. He really did, and I feel like
yeah.
we missed out because that's all we get. He never speaks after he talks to Han Solo. He never says a word.
Mm,
He says, "Ow." Right. Oh, and I do like the scene where they both whip up their lightsabers together, him and Ray.
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, here we
yeah.
go. Like that was nuts. That kind of popped into my. I didn't take notes like, oh, I'll remember all this stuff, but I teach high school and my brain is melting it. Kyle said, did anyone else wonder why Carrie Russell was wearing eyeliner even though she was wearing a mask? She's got to look good under there, I guess.
Guess
I'm still
so.
confused by her character. Like, what is her character? Because her mom is in the Battle for Jakku, and it's Ziva Bliss, and then
Mm,
the Spice Runners, and I don't know if like they're human or not, or what's going on there. But it was just like J.J. Abrams brought everybody back that he's ever worked with in television and put him in this movie. That was the last thing that Ben Solo said. Yeah, which is disappointing that he didn't have something a little
Oh
bit
my
more.
gosh. That really is. That's the last thing he ever said. Wow,
Yeah,
that's kind of
mm,
sad. That's really
yeah.
sad.
Oh,
They really should have given him one line.
just let him, yeah, let
One
him deliver a
line.
yeah.
line as Ben Solo. Fan that has this Hound scene destroyed me, especially because my dealing with my dad dying of cancer at the time.
Oh
Yeah, but I
man, that's
have a
rough.
lot of people that we're friends with that kind of had the similar. Yeah, and Kamal says condolences there, but yeah, I, pretty good stuff. I mean, I don't know, like
Mm,
it's just kind of this movie's all over the place. I think we've kind of discussed that. Like for us,
Yeah.
it's like it's really good. Then you're kind of like, what? And did they introduce too many people? Do you think it should have
That's
been two movies? Like what? Like
that's
did they
one
need to bring all these different characters in? I mean, was it
yeah.
Jana? Was that her name?
Yeah.
And then Zori and them. I mean, some of this stuff I felt like, and I guess we can talk about this a little bit too. We got a few minutes left, but like some of the story plot and the story devices, like that captain's medallion thing that Zori had, that seemed like total BS to me. Like we've never heard of anything like that. And I get it. Every movie, there's new stuff, but like what? Like, what is this thing? Like, I don't know if it bothered you guys or not, but I was like, this is
It's no
completely
different than having the codes from some captain. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
but I'd rather
It's just
have
a
the
code
codes.
thing.
Have codes,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Like
I don't know. I didn't have a
then they
problem
just
with that.
happen to have a little thing that you could put it in and shove it down into the. I
Yeah,
don't know that
that
didn't
is,
sit well with
yeah.
me.
Every chip has that.
Yeah,
The biggest
so
thing I think for me with like stuff like that was just that I feel like there were so many little things where it's just kind of like we randomly have a little solution like pop up here or there, and there are just a lot of these things that kind of like because this movie moves so fast.
it
This movie
does.
moves really fast. I was
Yeah.
like trying to kind of, I had a busy day, so I'm trying to get a couple things done while I'm like, and if I look down for a second, I'm like, wait, okay, go back. What? Like I feel like I missed so much like if I look down for just a second. So it's so fast paced. Like you said, there's so many characters that are constantly getting introduced. And so I feel like in order to keep with how fast paced the movie was, there were a lot of things where it's like they would introduce this problem and then we got to throw a solution at it and move on to the next thing. And I
Yeah.
feel like there were just so many kind of moments like that where I'm like, we could have kind of carried over this one more like central problem with like finding Exegol, and that there were a lot of kind of little things that happened in between that we didn't quite need, and that it could have been carried out a little more. We could have gotten some more detail. My biggest thing when it comes to anything media is more show, less tell. And this is a movie where there's a lot of tell. There's a lot of
Yeah.
explain this thing, talk about this thing, rather than allow the audience to discover it as you go throughout the story. And I feel like the really, really fast paced nature of the movie, which it's nice because it doesn't drag. I'll admit it doesn't. It keeps you engaged, but it's almost to the point where it's overwhelming. And so it's like,
Yeah.
I wish there had been some things where there was more detail put into certain plot points that could have been drawn out a little bit more intrigue, a little bit more show, even battle scenes that could have been drawn out a little bit longer that were really interesting. Things like the Knights of Ren that we get to just see and not know anything about or really get to see much of them actually in action a ton other than a little bit here and there. And I love the Knights of Ren because of the Ben Solo, or I guess Kylo Ren comic.
Yes,
That
yeah.
explains how he becomes the leader of the Knights of Ren. That fascinates me. And I'm like, man, there is so much that like could have even just a tiny bit more of kind of delving in deeper to some of these things versus having so much get introduced. I would have loved to dive a little deeper into some of these things that were really cool, these really fascinating concepts. And it's just a shame that we didn't really get to go deeper into some of those things just because
Yeah.
of how much there is, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. That's a
That
lot.
makes
But
I mean, that was
yeah,
one of the
Yeah.
biggest complaints was how fast this movie, especially the first act. I mean, it's like bam, 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 and
yeah,
it's just like you said, it never lulls. But I mean, I feel like if you make a good movie, like how long are the Dune movies? They're like 3 hours long, and you've got Avengers Endgame that's over 3 hours. Like if you make a good movie and you put the storylines like you said and give stuff, people would have been fine with it. I had
Mhm.
heard rumors that they wanted to split this into two parts. And it feels like when you're watching it, like, yeah, this could have been two full movies. They could have
Yeah.
yeah.
slowed down a little bit. Some of the plot devices just didn't work for me. What about you, Mike?
I, I think to your point, you've said before, like the whole trilogy seems like three separate movies. I think if they would have planned it out and wrote it as three movies, everything that got crammed into this one could have bled back into the middle one, and everything could have gone a lot smoother. To your point, like it is fast paced, it is a lot of crammed in, but I think they felt like they needed to do all that to tell the story that they wanted to tell. And if it would have been just a cohesive trilogy where one leads to two, leads to three, I think the whole thing would have been smoother, instead of just three separate movies that we just thought, whipped up.
Yeah, I
Yeah, for sure.
absolutely. I think that there, yeah, there's just a lot of there's a lack of cohesion between the three, which is a shame, because there are so many concepts in the sequels that are really fascinating. There are so many characters that are really great characters, and so I think that's kind of my hope with, especially like going forward into the Rey movie, that we get the opportunity to do some of the things, to dive into some of the things. I mean, gosh, it would be incredible if we could see Finn in that movie. And so many people, I think that's the biggest thing that I'll hear a lot of people talk about, is the fact that they kind of hinted at Finn becoming a Jedi. We never got to see that come through to fruition. Things like that I would really love to see carried forward. So I have a lot of hope for maybe going into this film, that maybe if gosh, I hope it happens. I really, really, really hope it does. And I think, well, that we get to see some of that in the future. I have some high hopes for that. So
Absolutely.
I'm concerned. I don't know how you guys feel, but after all this Kathleen Kennedy stuff, her interview that came out, like, she basically said that there's going to be the Kinberg trilogy, and she didn't talk a lot about the Rey movie, but it seems like the Rey movie is just going to be the Rey movie, and then there's going to be this separate trilogy that doesn't involve Rey, which is odd to me. Like, I would love to see Rey have her, continue through a trilogy.
Right.
I mean, maybe it turns out good. I don't know, but I don't want just one more movie of Rey. I want more Rey. Like, it's her turn.
Yeah,
it's her turn.
Yeah.
Luke from carry it into the sequel trilogy. I'd like to. I agree. I'd like to see that kind of continue. Really see her character get to develop and mature. I think there's a lot of potential with her character, and and she is a really beloved character, and I completely understand why. And so I just think that there's so much more that could be told with her. So I agree. I absolutely hope that maybe that ends up the case, but we'll
the
see.
good thing is, the good thing is nothing's set in stone yet. I mean, they change their minds all the damn time, so who knows what's going to happen.
I don't think they know what the hell's going on. Still, like, they don't. I don't want to get started on this whole.
We're an hour in. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole.
It's a confusing time in the fandom. I'll admit, there's a lot of things that feel kind of up in the air right now. So we'll see where some of that stuff goes. I hope that maybe sometime this year we kind of have a little bit more clarity on where the future of Star Wars is going, because right now it feels a little uncertain.
But don't you feel like that should be at a Lucasfilm panel on day one of Celebration, right? I mean, that's 100%. where my concern is like, I want to see this, and I want to get some, like, hey, this is what we're doing. I want a Marvel type release, like, hey, this is phase one, this is the new phase, this is the Rey phase, and this is going to be the Simon Kinberg phase, whatever. Over on Instagram, Stephen Loves Yugi says Rey is a good character. They made her a bit OP, but she is great regardless. Would like to see more of her, and I think that always helps. More of a character. I mean, I always come back, and I know people who listen to us probably hate when I bring this up, but think about Ahsoka. You could not stand her in the Clone Wars movie, and now she's beloved. She's, a fan favorite. I mean, most of us, love her. I one or two people that don't like her that I know of, but and I don't necessarily want to end on a negative on this, so hopefully we'll have a quick second. But the relationships in this series, now, is it all jacked up because like Kumail and I think Fan has to, the same person didn't write all three of these? Who's in love with who? Who's ending up with, that's
a good question.
I feel like, cause that's what my wife, when we were watching last night, she's like, who's ending up with who? Like, what is happening here? Because, like, you introduce these new characters right towards the end. They're on this ship, and all of a sudden, like, because you have Rose who saves Finn because that's how you win, by saving what you love. And then he's like, yeah, hit the bricks. I'm with this new chick I met 5 minutes ago. We're gonna save the day together instead of, they did Kelly Marie Tran dirty. Yes. What is going on with the relationships here? And then hopefully we'll have a quick second to say something positive before we end. But these relationships drive me nuts.
Confused, because I was confused by the end. I was like, okay, there was the one line between Poe and what was her name? Zori,
yeah.
Like, can I kiss you? And I was like, okay, wait, are they a thing? Were they a thing? Are they still a thing? What's happening? They haven't seen each other in forever. And then with Finn, it's like, I thought from The Last Jedi, Rose, who's this new girl? I was very confused. And then, I mean, and I'll admit, like, I kind of understand the whole Kylo and, you know, or Ben and Rey thing, but it just kind of also does feel like it slightly comes out of nowhere. And I do remember in the theater, actually, it's really funny. I was sitting next to my sister and she looks at me and she's like, they're going to kiss. And I'm like, no, they're not. And seconds later, and I looked at her and I was like, what? And so that kind of came out of left field. And watching this again, I was like, yeah, that still kind of feels slightly out of nowhere for me. Like there was tension there, but I don't feel like there was enough buildup for it to be like, bam, okay, yes. And so yeah, there's a lot of confusion there for me. I'm glad I'm not alone in that, because I was kind of like, did I miss something? Or like, yeah, a lack of clarity there for sure.
Yeah. I think in all, like the fan in the hat says, I actually got on board with the Raylo for a while, but the community got really intense by the time 9 is out of control to me. Yeah, I mean, people who are in the Raylo, man, they're committed. More so than Rey and Kylo were, I think. But Mike, how do the relationships in this how do you feel about the relationship?
I think this is one more shot where they missed the mark, and you could see there was no plan. You know, in the prequel trilogy, in the original trilogy, you had a romance relationship that carried you all the way through. In this one, it's, you know, we dab a little here, we dab a little there. And it never, like, nothing ever came to fruition. Like, it just, it's one more thing that the trilogy was missing.
Yeah, for sure. I think you guys are right, though. It's just, that's that lack of continuity, the lack of, just bringing people in. I just still don't understand. Like, I don't mind Kathleen Kennedy. I think, you know, we have to give her credit for the good stuff and credit for the bad stuff. I mean, that's her position. But for someone who's as great at her job as she is, you think about the billions of dollars that she's made for everybody, for Lucas, for Disney, not to go into this with a plan seems kind of insane for someone who does what she does for a living and is considered, you know, I know Star Wars fans are split on her, but I bet you any company in the world is probably going to want her to come to work for them because she's going to make them billions of dollars. So that seems a little weird for me, but let's end on a positive note. What is something like we haven't mentioned yet? Did you love the, like lightsaber battles or something like, you know, the flights, seeing Lando again, like what hit home for you guys? I want to end on a positive note on this one. Cause I think we're all kind of in the same boat. We liked it. It was, you know, but, Mike, do you got a positive for me?
I would say, yeah, like seeing Lando again was great. I think the idea of the galaxy uniting together to fight tyranny, that big idea was great. We already talked about all the scenes that we enjoyed with this. I mean, honestly, there was this conversation we had tonight. There was a lot of positive that came out of it. And I think that maybe 5 years from now, maybe 10 years from now, when I go back to this movie again, I might actually really like it. You know,
yeah,
it's not, I mean, there's definitely problems. We've pointed those out. There's problems with the whole trilogy that, you know, we can't really overcome, but we have what we have. And I think at some point you might sit down and watch The Force Awakens and love it. You might struggle through the Rise of Skywalker. I'm sorry, The Last Jedi, and get to the Rise of Skywalker and say, yeah, that was pretty good. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. To bounce off that, I you know, my thing is that I as a consumer and a fan, I feel like I kind of have this ability for me, which I think not all people have, and I'm grateful I'm able to do this, to kind of separate between did I enjoy this and then looking at it critically. And there's some things that I can look at critically and be like, this is an incredible thing, it's a masterpiece, but I don't particularly enjoy it, and vice versa. You know, some of the prequels are my favorite movies, and I can watch Attack of the Clones and I love watching that movie, but I can look at it critically and go, it's not particularly good, but I love it. And I feel like Rise of Skywalker falls into that category for me too, where I genuinely enjoyed watching it. I had a good time watching it today. There were moments where I laughed. There were moments I got emotional. There were moments where I was like, whoa, that was a really cool shot. That was an awesome line. And so, like, as a fan, I enjoy watching this movie, even for all of its flaws. And it has some really nice moments. And I think that that kind of is the thing as fans that, you know, I think it helps to enjoy things more when you can look at it from that perspective of, did I enjoy this? Did I have a fun time, you know, watching this movie? Was I able to connect to a part of it? And for me, that answer is yes. There were moments that I connected to, moments I got really emotional watching. And when the movie wrapped up, I was like, wow, I enjoyed watching that. And I think exactly like you said, 5 years from now, I'll probably enjoy it even more than I did watching it this time. And so, you know, I think there's a lot of really positive things about this movie, and I'm glad that I rewatched it because I wouldn't have been rewatching it till the end of 2025. So it was kind of nice to rewatch it, and I will look forward to getting to rewatch it when I get to it in my chronological watch through. So I'll you know, kind of be anticipating watching it again.
Yeah, you guys said it. There's lots of good things, and that's the thing too. Is like, I wonder why, like, you know, like, oh, it's not a great movie, but we're talking pretty highly about it. I mean, I know we could talk negative about it. There are things, but I mean, whatever. I like the lightsaber battles, like the epicness of them. I don't understand why they went to holding lightsabers backwards. That doesn't really seem like an effective way to fight. But I love the grand scale of that out there on that ocean and the reconnection. And I really liked Luke Skywalker lifting the Red 5 out of the water. Like, I felt like that came full circle to his training. And, you know, I like that. There's a couple other things. I mean, I liked how they kind of stuck it to Rian Johnson with the, you know, Jedi's weapon deserves more respect than that when he catches it. So there were some things I really enjoyed that are kind of digs. I felt like at Rian Johnson, but what did he say? Stephen Loves Yugi says there's a lots of good and bad in the sequels, same as the prequels. Might be true of the original trilogy, but my nostalgia goggles won't let me see it. Yeah, I think Stephen, I think a lot of us are that way. Like, we want our nostalgia. I like that, nostalgia goggles. We're gonna have to use that again. But yeah, so awesome chat. I love having these conversations. Angel, thank you so much for coming on the show. You want to tell everybody where they can find you on social media, because you have a different handle on Instagram and you have a different handle on TikTok as well. So let everybody know where they can find you, what you're up to, and then we'll sign off.
Absolutely. You can find me at nerdygirl501. The only thing is the underscore is in a different place. But typically, if you just search nerdygirl501 on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, you will find me across all of those platforms. And yeah, I'm looking forward to posting a bunch of celebration content as we get closer. I posted a video kind of talking about panel situation and stuff like that. I'll be posting more information about that and all of my regular content. And then, yeah, be keeping things as up to date as possible when I'm there, trying to post about updates, projects, stuff like that. And I'm really looking forward to all the content I'll be able to share with that. So yeah, if you want to find me on there, I would absolutely love if you want to follow me along. So
all right, very cool. You got a fan in the hat, it looks like. Very wise. Rise is a mess, but it charms me in spirit. It's the issue. What's Tahu say? Please send me your Jedi powers my way, bros. I Cyclone is headed our way tomorrow night. Oh no. I packed up all my rugby jerseys. Man, you get to safety, bud. Get to safety.
Yeah, please do.
Message us.
Let us know. Let us know when it passes. Everything's all right, buddy.
Can't wait till next Tuesday to find out if you made it, brother. So
I want to know before next Tuesday, buddy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We'll be hitting you up. So again, awesome. And Joe, I hope we get to run into each other. I mean, I'm assuming we'll get to run into each other in Japan. It was very nice finally getting to meet you. Keep up the great work over on your channels. I love watching it. I just love the way you bring some things differently than other people do. I'll have to say that your Faith Fridays, I think you call it?
Yeah, Faith and Friday.
Yeah, that really caught my attention, because we don't see a lot of that in the Star Wars world. And I like the fact that you're not afraid to, you know, get out there and put yourself out there. That was pretty awesome. So well done to you.
And thanks again for having me on. This was really, really fun.
Yes, pleasure.
I really enjoyed talking to you guys. I hope that I'll meet you in Japan in a few weeks here.
Absolutely. All right. Well, for everybody, I hope you guys enjoyed this walk through the trilogy. Mike and I, maybe we need to like talk about the full trilogy as a whole here eventually. We might want to move off of it. Who knows? But
we'll see.
For all of us, we have spoken. We'll see you guys next week.
See ya.